So welcome to Black History Resources in Plainfield Public Library Archives. This morning, I'm going to show you the various Black history resources specific to Plainfield available in the library's archive. Because these records are hidden across multiple collections, it has been difficult for students, researchers, historians, and genealogists to locate them. So we've compiled them all into a new online finding aid and index to provide easier access to these historical materials. Some of them are only available on site, but many are viewable online. This finding aid is composed of an introduction followed by 13 tabs, which are either specific record or book collections or a special topic that we get many questions about. I'm going to go through them and present the highlights for each one. As we go through, please type your questions into the Q&A, and I will try to answer them at the end of the program. Okay. Black History Reference, a cross-collection finding aid for archival resources at Plainfield Public Library. So since the city's beginning, Black residents have influenced the building and development of Plainfield. Although some people may have been brought here as slaves, many more moved here or migrated here to build families, homes, and businesses. Both men and women worked in a myriad of fields. There were numerous social, religious, and professional organizations as well. Our city boasts several important Black firsts for New Jersey in these fields, with notable accomplishments in education and athletics. To be sure, our city has produced brilliant minds, talented artists, and influential activists. This finding aid presents a starting point for further research of Plainfield's Black history, and it will be updated on an ongoing basis. You can also view and print a brochure of Plainfield Black history highlights using this link. The image you see is a painting, is a print donated to us by local artist Alonso Adams. May we make them proud. So I'm going to start, I will start by saying that there was an interruption in our server this morning. So although we'll be able to share with you the direct link to this finding aid, it actually isn't linked on the website until later this afternoon. So we'll start with artists, authors, and architects. First, we have a local authors collection, which includes many different books for over 100 local authors of a diverse ethnic backgrounds. The city has had authors since the early 1800s, writing about everything from science to poetry and children's books. Some notable Black authors include the very popular J.M. Benjamin, books by historians Ethel Washington and Dr. Leonard Bethel, poetry by Jai Block and Reverend Marilyn Davis, and a recipe book written by an African-American recipe book by Wendell R. Dorn. And these are all searchable through the library's online catalog. Throughout this finding aid, there will be many links to a variety of things. Some of these will link to the catalog. For example, when you click on the searchable link, it will bring you directly to the library's catalog. And you'll be able to look at all the authors in that collection. Some of the other links, which we'll show later, will bring you directly to the resource or the material. Some of you may have heard about the library's extensive blueprint collection, donated to the library in 1982 by your local architect, Charles Detwiller. So the collection includes over 6,000 blueprints, mostly for the city of Plainfield. Within the collection, we've identified drawings by two early 20th century African-American architects, Edward R. Williams and Reverend Robert L. Robinson. Robinson was a local architect who resided in Plainfield and Westfield, and he actually became a minister later in life. He was a former trustee of the Bethel Baptist Church, although he had no regular pastorate. And when you click on the Robinson link, you will see that we have 6 sets of drawings in our collection by him. Edward R. Williams, who is this image on the left here, was employed by the Metropolitan Realty Company of New York. This was a Black-owned company incorporated in 1900 that built businesses and homes across the country. By 1907, it became incredibly successful, and company architect Williams was in full charge of the company's architectural department. We have one drawing by him, and he resided at 311 Clinton Avenue. And if you click there, it'll go right to that drawing by him. As some of you may know, the library at one time was also a museum, a fine arts museum, and we still have a lot of that fine art in our collection. Within the collection, we have several African-American artists, and these works are on rotating display throughout the building. Many of you will be familiar with Alonso Adams. He is a Plainfield artist that grew up using the library and later ended up donating several of his works to the library. If you remember from when the library was open in full swing, you may have noticed two of his paintings on either side of the reference desk, the Honorable Thurgood Marshall, and also his other oil on canvas Mother to Son. In our meeting room on the lower level in room 5, we have a temporary gallery set up of his other works that are in our collection. Some of the other artists in our collection are Indira Bailey, a painter, Joe Barnes, a photographer, Clarence Haslam, who's a sculptor and was also employed by the library for several years, and pen and ink drawing artist, Mel Holston. So now we'll move on to one of those special topics that we get a lot of questions about. This is the July 1967 uprising or civil unrest, which is also referred to as the Plainfield Riots. All of the photographs we have of this event are contained in our Courier News photograph archive. There are 23 images that are documenting the post-uprising events here in July 1967. These images appeared in the July 17th, 1967 issue of the Courier News on pages 1 and 23. We've placed 4 of these very striking images here onto this finding aid, but if you click on the link, you'll be able to go back to that image browser and see all of these images that we have. We also have a number of original materials and ephemera that deal with this subject, 2 of which were issued by the Plainfield Joint Defense Committee in 1969 to help the defense of Plainfield's Black hostages, Bobby Lee Williams, Gail Madden, and George Merritt Jr. This most recent accession that we have is called Speak Out 1969, and it was a promotional pamphlet. We've digitized this and have made it available on the website. And I'm just going to share that with you now. Okay. So this is a 6-page pamphlet that was sent out, that was handed out or delivered in some way to the residents of Plainfield in support of these residents who were in jail at the time for the murder of the policeman John V. Gleason. So I'm going to go back. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll go back to continue with the materials. So the other materials here are a large excerpt from the Analysis of Plainfield report, also known as the Kerner Commission report, which we've scanned from the 5th reel of records from a large range of microfilm under the Civil Rights during the Johnson administration microfilm reels. If you click on this link, it will open another PDF that we've separated out, and now that made that viewable. We have some other materials here. We have some items that were presented by the local police, as well as newspaper clippings, scrapbooks, which are only available on site. We haven't scanned them yet, and we may not make them available online because they would contain so much copyright material. But all of these articles are still available through the Courier News. As same with our other vertical files about this topic. If you're a library card holder, you can search the Courier News online via the library subscription to ProQuest Northeast News Stream. And when you click this link, it'll bring right to that page where you can access the Courier News, whether you're in library or remotely with your library card. Additionally, we have an oral history project that we started in 2015 and continued in 2016, where there are 31 recordings regarding the Plainfield Uprising. So we collected as much firsthand information that we were able to at that time, with a diversity of interviewees who represented a pretty wide range of personal experience. So this will work the same way, where you would select the person's interview you wanted to listen to. That would bring you to our collections browser, where you could then play the interview as well as view a transcript for it. This transcript is also searchable using the advanced search at the top of your screen. So we'll finish off this topic with the list of the Plainfield and New Jersey reference books that pertain to this. We have Cities Under Siege, Report for Action, a printed copy of the report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, a printed copy of Riot, Civil, and Criminal Disorders. We do have a selection of the Everett Lattimore testimony pages from this section available to you. And then we have another publication, The Road to Anarchy, produced by the Riot Study Commission of the New Jersey Police Benevolent Association. So we'll go to our next tab is clubs and organizations. This is another one of the special records tabs. The library holds a lot of records from many different clubs and organizations in Plainfield. So we'll cover some of the early clubs and organizations here. We'll start off with an image. This is a Paul Collier image that was taken on June 27th, 1934, of the New Jersey African American Masonic Lodges and Ladies Auxiliary. This was taken on West Front Street for the annual state convention. So there were many different lodges who all met in Plainfield on this day. And this is a panoramic photo. So it's quite large, and we actually had to scan it in 4 parts and stitch it together because it's so large. So as we've mentioned, Plainfield's Black community has had numerous clubs and organizations historically and currently. These have included social, religious, fraternal, and sports clubs. There's been all Black intercity league baseball teams and other teams. We also around the 1920s was a time that the city directories began to list all of the clubs in town by race or creed. And in 1921, there were 11 Black clubs listed, and there were 20 in 1927. You may know already that the Mount Olive Baptist Church was the first Black church and was organized in 1871 by the Reverend John Carey. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end when we go over our houses of worship collection. So between the 1870s and the 1920s to the 50s, which is considered the early Jim Crow era, we had several local fraternal and social organizations which arose from established lodges in the country. The largest of these were listed in the city directories and newspapers, so I'm able to list them for you here. These are mostly Freemasons. The Stone Square Lodge, number 38, still exists in Plainfield. There were Knights of Pythias, Order of Oddfellows, Order of Calanth, which was a women's society, the Order of Moses, which was the women's auxiliary, and then an independent Order of Good Samaritans and Daughters of Samaria. In terms of Black women's suffrage, we have the earliest mention is in about 1902 with the Plainfield Equal Suffrage League. Later, about 1920, we find the Plainfield City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs, or the City Federation of Colored Women's Clubs of Plainfield. And then in 1930, the League of Negro Women Voters was organized by Mrs. Fred Durant, pardon me. Her husband, Dr. Fred Durant, was one of the only 2 Black doctors in Plainfield in the early 1900s. Moving on to other to specific organization and club records, we have the Plainfield YMCA collection, and within this collection are records about the Moreland Y, or also known as the Black Y. This was a YMCA branch located in the old Hope Chapel property when it was purchased in 1926. We have a history of this, some photographs. The history we've made available, written by Frederick Johnson, we've made available here at this link. It's also viewable on site. We have a photograph here. This photograph is from 1956, the Moreland, I'm sorry, I think that's 1946. That's a typo on my part, sorry. So this is actually taken from the Marjorie Patterson Papers collection, and I'll get to that soon. So here's a good example of an organization with records across multiple collections. And as a researcher, you may not know to look at all these collections. And so hopefully this finding aid will help locate some of these things. We also have some organizations that are held within the Robert L. Bender papers. The relevant series here are the American Civil Liberties Union, the NAACP, and the Congress of Racial Equality. We have two more organizations. We also have collection of records for United Family and Children's Services, Children's Society in Plainfield, which was established as a Children's Home Association. Now, this organization includes many different ethnic groups, but so often as the time with these earlier records, many of the Black families and Black individuals are specifically identified in the records as being colored. In this case, this is listed as under the nationality in many of these case records. Many of the records here were indexed and organized by so many of our volunteers, and I will talk more about that a little bit later. But really, we wouldn't have most of these things indexed if it wasn't for our volunteers, one of which are attending the program today, and I will mention her again a little later. These are links to the books, which are unfortunately only available on site, but the indexes are available online. So I am going to see if I can't open this, but I think it's going to continue to open it up in the different tab. I think I'm not going to be able to change that at this point. So finally, we have the Rick Charles Choral Ensemble. This was formed in 1980 and is still going strong today. But the date of the records we have are from 1986 to 2004. Our holdings include a small number of materials, including performance programs, photographs, newspaper articles, and brief histories. So one of our larger book collections is our diversity studies collection. The library began this in 2003 to gather and preserve research materials on the diverse communities of Plainfield. You can learn more about that here. This will bring you to the overall webpage for this, and there's a lot of information right on that page. But the cornerstone of this collection is the Barbara Polk Riley African American Book Collection. Here's a photograph of Miss Riley in 2007 standing with the collection. The roots of this collection stem from her father, Dr. Charles C. Polk, who began collecting in the 1920s. His collection grew as his children gave him books on African-American subjects, which expanded this collection. Additions came from many sources, including bookstores and book clubs that specialized in Black history, fiction, and culture. Barbara continued this tradition, and she became a volunteer and worked in several historically Black colleges. During her career, she met many writers who helped shape the collection and inscribe the books to the Polk family. This collection numbers over 3,000 books on African-American history and culture. It includes hardcover and paperback, first editions, and autographed editions. The books in this collection do not circulate, but are absolutely viewable on site. And you can look on a list by author or title by clicking on those links. I meant to say here a thank you to Barbara for all of her work and her dedication as a volunteer at Plainfield Public Library. Barbara, when we were open before COVID, would come in twice a week and help us index our police logs and our tax ledgers and some of our other books that we'll even see later in this program. So a special thank you, Barbara. We'll move on to the tab of early records and census records. We'll start off with a recorded program that was presented by a Drake House Museum president, Historical Society of Plainfield President Nancy Piwawar. And we have that linked on our website, and you can view that here. That'll take you to the YouTube video. We also have, you can access the U.S. Freedmen's Bank Records, 1865 to 1874. This is a name, index, and images of the registers for 60,000 people who opened accounts in the Freedmen Savings and Trust Company. These records are not held by the library, but they are accessible via our subscription to Heritage Quest, whether on-site or remote, or via Family Search, which you can access on-site, or you can create your own account for at home. We have pulled together here the Plainfield pages for the federal census records for Plainfield. These are accessible for free via the census website, but I've gone ahead and pulled, these are the statistical pages that I pulled for Plainfield. The last few will take you directly to the census website, and you would need to pull those on your own. Now, the actual records for the federal census are viewable via Ancestry or via FamilySearch.com. And for a limited time, I think until the end of June, with your library card, you will be able to access Ancestry remotely from your home. So, early voting poll lists. The Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia has given 2 virtual presentations for the library. When Women Lost a Vote, A Revolutionary Story, 1776 to 1807, and The Same Principle Lives in Us, People of African Descent in the American Revolution. Now, in both of these programs, Black voters of early New Jersey voting polls were discussed. Now, because we weren't able to record these informative programs, we do refer you to their own online exhibit for detailed information regarding free voters of color in New Jersey. Again, this is an external website, but really fascinating and interesting information that you will have easy access to. Oh no, okay, here we go. Back to early records. Here we have our library director, Mary Ellen Rogan, is a genealogist, and she helped us create an index for the early census of Plainfield in 1860. There were 40 households with Black residents in Plainfield listed in the 1860 federal census. They had a range of occupations and a range of ages. So the below excerpt shows you the first 10 households, and it demonstrates the real historical importance of the federal census and the information it contains. If you click this link, you can view and print the entire document with the 40 households in it. Now, one of the things that came up were in dwelling 79, household 84 with Dana Brown, who is listed here as a slave. Now, at this time, there were a special slave enumeration schedules that were separate from the free inhabitant lists. And so in this schedule, she's not listed with the slave enumerations schedule, she's listed with the free residents, which will bring up other information that I'll get to with one of the later tabs. So then we'll move on to military. Starting with the Civil War, we have several men from Plainfield enlisting as soldiers in the Civil War, including John Van Horn and Edward Dow. As well as Black Plainfielders in the Navy, a lot of this information is contained with local author Ethel Washington's book, Union County's Black Soldiers and Sailors of the Civil War. This is a New Jersey reference book, but I believe we also have it in circulation. From World War I, we have this image taken by Paul Collier. This image is of the Hellfighters, which was the 369th Infantry Regiment and were the first Americans to reach the Rhine. Among approximately 170 New Jersey volunteers, there were 18 men from Plainfield that we've been able to document so far enlisted with the Hellfighters, and these are all of their names here. This image is actually a crop from a much larger image, but we have not been able to identify any of the soldiers that are marching here. We have another recorded program presented by Nancy Pivawar, where she talks about remembering Plainfield soldiers during World War I and the influenza epidemic. So we'll finish with World War II, where we don't really have that many records, but we do have quite a few photos, again, taken by Paul Collier, who very frequently took pictures of the local Army inductees before they would leave for Fort Dix. This image we're seeing is from November 13th, and it's a contingent of selected inductees from Plainfield for the local boards 13 and 14 as they pose in front of Plainfield City Hall before leaving for Fort Dix. So this is a good example of photographs that we have of people, but we aren't able to identify any of the people. So if you're able to, if at any time with any of the photographs in our collection, if you could ever identify them, please do contact us. Newspapers. Okay, I will try to finish these last few tabs before taking up too much time. Plainfield's Black newspapers. So July 1904 is the date is thought to be the date of Plainfield first offered a Black newspaper, which at the time was known as a race journal. It was called the Plainfield Herald by the proprietor, Reverend Dr. E. Jackson of Mount Olive Baptist Church. And we think it ceased publication in 1907. We have a record of it today and only a few sources, two of which I've put here from the Courier News. And notable in his own right, Reverend Jackson became the first Black deputy of the American Woodmen of the state of New Jersey, which was a fraternal organization. He is also a 4 times president of the New Jersey Colored Baptist Ministers. Later coverage focusing on the African-American experience could be found in the Plainfield column of the New York Age. And they covered all different topics from society events to first showings of talking movies at the Moreland Y. Now we don't have a subscription to that covers this publication, but you can access it online for free through the fultonhistory.com website, although the searching is a little bit tricky there. You can also request specific article lookups that the local history staff can help you with via newspapers.com. Or if you want to get into some serious research and browsing, we recommend starting your own like a month-long subscription to the newspapers.com. We'll follow this with The Voice, which started in 1968. This newspaper coverage provides details that may not be recorded elsewhere and is invaluable to learning about this time. So we have digitized 1972 to 1974, and we have early issues in hard copy of 1969 to 1972. We also have the Plainfield Today City News. So the Plainfield City News started as the Plainfield Today City News in 1983. It was co-founded by editor-in-chief Jan Edgington Johnson and her husband, Henry. The Johnsons, in fact, produced 3 of only a few African-American publications published in New Jersey at that time. And in 1990, the title changed. They changed the title to City News to reflect the paper's expanding coverage area. The library holds the Plainfield Today City News on microfilm from June 1989 only to November 1989. And then the City News on microfilm from June 1990 to February 1993, and paper from April 1998 to July 2003 with gaps. And I would put a call out that if you have any old issues of The Voice or Plainfield Today City News or the City News, to please contact us. We also want to just mention here that, of course, although our early local newspapers provided general coverage and the Black community wasn't covered with as much detail, if you're doing research, we do encourage you to use our early local newspapers and the Courier News. And those early local newspapers that have been digitized are located here and are linkable from that page. Finally, I'll finish up with just providing access to the Library of Congress Chronicling America project, which has a number of which has digitized a number of African American newspapers as part of this project. And these are all searchable online for free. Okay. We have the oral history collections, including the one I mentioned earlier, Plainfield Voices. We also have from 2007, we worked with, as part of the StoryCorps Griot project, we have 17 Plainfield interviews. And one of them again was Barbara Polk Riley. Ethel M. Washington is here, and as well as some very notable others. These are all accessible online, and the current projects are accessible through this link right here. Not the current library projects, the current StoryCorps projects. We have collections of 2 collections of personal papers that were donated. We have the Reverend Burton C. and Dr. Shirley B. Seabrook Cathy family collection from 1954 to 2015. This collection offers a large variety of materials from this family, photographs, scrapbooks, record albums, awards, certificates, and ephemera. We have the previously mentioned Marjorie Patterson Papers from 1947 to 1999. These document her work with the Plainfield area YMCA and the Tenants Organization of Plainfield. This collection includes organizational minutes, committee reports, programming plans, letters, cards, ephemera, publications, and photographs. I didn't want to leave out some of the notable people that we have collection items for. Would direct you to the Plainfield, New Jersey Wikipedia page, which includes a very substantial list of notable Plainfielders. And we also offer a book, Plainfield, People from Plainfield. In terms of athletes, we have an autobiography and a biography of baseball pitcher Joe Black, as well as these 2 baseball cards. We have an entire web exhibit dedicated to Milt Campbell, Plainfield champion, with all of the photos that we have from the Curry News Photograph Archive. This was an exhibit we did a few years back, and you could look through all of these photographs very easily just by going to this web exhibit. So big celebrities we have are from George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. We have an autobiography and more photos from the Curry News Archive, as well as photos for musician and Parliament Funkadelic member Bernie Worrell, and funeral images from Parliament Funkadelic member Eddie Hazel. We also have a number of vertical files about notable Plainfielders on site. I would also present here some notable women. This section is ongoing and is very likely to be turned into an online exhibit in its own right. And we'll also direct you back to the introduction page where we have some Plainfield education firsts. We have a printable notable women brochure, and some of the women from that brochure are Hazel Fields, Mary Normant, Adele Brown, and Joanne Hollis. West End Gardens was renamed the Joanne Hollis Gardens in 2015, and we do have a printable brochure and history available for that here. Our photograph collections. We only have one collection from a living contributor in all of our historical photograph collections, and that is Irving George. And his collections were donated as part of the Irving and Clotie George's photograph collection, which runs from 1969 to 1987. This is a huge collection of color and black and white prints that document the city during the late 60s, 70s, and 80s. It documents the George's family, their neighbors, and the friends, all engaged in a variety of activities. There's a lot of school and town activities and school and town athletics. George and his kids were involved with a lot of sports. It has a lot of local events and just regular everyday activities like barbecuing in the backyard. We featured this collection in our 2010 exhibit, Chronicles of Plainfield, and you could learn and view all the things we have digitized in this collection through the online database. Our other historical collections, do document Plainfield's Black community, and the easiest way to search is online using keywords, dates, and some other delimiters. A lot of some of the photographs are contained in the personal and family papers and clubs and organization records, and I have presented some of them here. But generally speaking, you're going to want to search. We've put out this nice search here. When you click on the link, it'll bring you to this time period and show you some of the items in these collections that we've already sort of pre-set up a search focusing on the African-American community and within these time periods. There aren't a lot of photographs in all of the collections, but there are some photographs in all of the collections. The contemporary photograph contest, of course, isn't really historical and documents current life back to 2006 in Plainfield. I will note that our photograph collection overall is particularly weak in documenting the 1950s and 60s of Plainfield. So if you have photographs from this or any time period that you are interested in sharing with us for scanning or donating to us to preserve for future generations, please do contact us. We have a Plainfield reference and genealogy collection. This contains books, but also original ledgers, such as this Dime Savings Institute signature book, which I believe Barbara helped us index. This was a bank in Plainfield that was established in 1883. And back then, because there wasn't photo identification to identify people, the bank had a signature book where people would sign so they could refer to their signature, but also had a column of a physical description for all the signees. But again, here, as is so often the case, there are special notation indicating a person of color. So we were able to, through the index, you can view the 240 Black citizens that are recorded in this ledger, and you could also view the entire index if you'd like. We have a collection of police Plainfield logs and city tax ledgers, which are currently being indexed. These are absolutely not specific to people of color, but again here, a lot of people are indicated with this person of color indication. You can go to the page here to learn more about these indexes. And we have everything that's been digitized over here and everything that's been indexed, the index is linked over here. We have a variety of books and publications that deal with segregation and race relations. These are books, reports, and surveys. If you see them linked here, for example, the Charles Booker versus the Board of Education, City of Plainfield, you can link here to get to a finding aid PDF. Sometimes we can provide the excerpt, but sometimes we are not able to digitize it and we'll only go to the catalog record. So in this instance, with the Negro Motorist Green Book Compendium, this is a reproduction. It is a compendium of all the Green Books. Plainfield has entries in 1947 and 1954. These images are courtesy of the New York Public Library. And in the 1954, we have a tourist home that is run by Miss Daisy Robinson. We don't have very much information about her, but we do offer an obituary to her, and you can click on that to view that. Anytime you need help locating an obituary, the local history department staff is here to help you, so you can contact us and we can help locate that for you. Some other surveys that we've made available through PDFs are the Norristown Survey on Human Relations, 6th grade plans, an effort to end racial imbalance, a survey of Negro life, and some other things you can see right here. We also have a list of books. These are not digitized, but these will link you to the catalog record. And we also have a list of books on the Plainfield Civil Uprising. This is really just copied and pasted from the other tab. All right. We'll get into slavery now. I do recommend you also see the early records. Now, this is an inescapable reality of Plainfield's past. Not only the well-known Caesar who served the Drake family, and Nancy also is telling me that she thinks also was involved with fought in the American Revolution. And I know she'll talk about that another time, so I won't go into that. But it is a reality that we have to face today. These early records are difficult to interpret because Plainfield was once part of Essex County and didn't form its own township until 1847. Slaves living in the location of the city today are hidden in the records of Westfield and Essex County. So we can offer you access to early records on microfilm. Family search microfilm reel containing slave receipts, deeds of manumission, birth records of Black children, and slaves of Essex County are accessible through family search. And I've linked to, okay, we'll go back. They're doing something with our website right now. So this will link out to documents that have been indexed, again, by our director, Mary Ellen Rogan, who's gone through these records and compiled an index for them. When you're on site or you have your family search account open, you can search on this specific reel number to view the original, to view the scans of the original records. Additionally, we hold a similar microfilm reel for Somerset County, but this is available only on site. In terms of our early newspapers, we wanted to show you this image from the Plainfield Gazette from 1849, which lists, which advertised a 12-year-old girl for sale, listed casually beside the latest prices for flours, wheat, and corn and potatoes. Her face is unknown, but when we look at something like this today, we cannot help be moved by, I mean, just the casual listing of this is just astounding, I think, particularly to a modern contemporary viewer. As I mentioned before, there were slave enumeration schedules. In New Jersey, slaves were not counted by name until 1860, and they were listed separately in the slave inhabitant or slave enumeration schedules under names of slave owners. The first schedule for New Jersey was in 1850. The slave enumeration in Plainfield for 1850 only lists one slave. This person was counted as age 57, female and Black, and was listed as being owned by James Compton, who his name is cut off here. However, we were able to find out her name, Hannah Vermeulen, because she was listed with the free inhabitants in the 1860 census under James Compton's household. And as we investigate these records, we find that there were 43 slaves listed in the regular New Jersey census and not in the slave inhabitant schedule as living in Plainfield. Dinah Brown, who is the woman I mentioned before, from the 1850 census. You can click on this to view the list here, and as we review the records, we can add them to the list. Okay. We also have a recorded program, Hidden History Stories of Early Local African Americans, which I mentioned before, by Nancy Piwawar, and we are providing this link to 10 databases. This is an external resource of 10 databases for slave genealogy. So I want to finish up. Sorry, this has taken such a long time this morning. With houses of worship. So back a few years ago, we did a wonderful exhibit, Building Faith in Plainfield, exploring the city's history through its houses of worship. So you can click on that and view that entire exhibit online here. But on this tab, we've listed the African-American houses of worship that we have records for in our collection. We also want to refer you to the early Plainfield newspapers and the Courier News, so you can look for more information about any of these churches. We'll go alphabetically here, starting with the Bethel Chapel, which was organized by the Crescent Avenue Presbyterian Church in 1884. We have a photograph here, and we have information that we found in the newspapers. There's the Calvary Methodist and Baptist Church on West 4th Street at Monroe. This was started in 1895. Some came from Mount Olive Baptist Church. We have this photograph from Paul Collier, and then this postcard from 1927. We have the aforementioned Mount Olive Baptist Church, organized in 1870, and two churches came out of this, the Shiloh Baptist Church, which I'll mention next, and the Calvary Baptist Church. We have a few photographs of the church and the early church fathers, and a vertical file, which will provide some handout information and open as a PDF. There's a Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church, where we have this photograph for, and then the Shiloh Baptist Church, where we have two photographs, as well as a church program, which we've scanned and made available in a PDF. So that is the finding aid